And, you know, just to kind of close it out here on this thought, if it's harmful for us economically, if it's not even beneficial for us in national security, which is the job of our government, which is to protect us, and of course it's to declare war, it's the job of the Congress, not the president, to declare war. That's important as well. The people should declare war, not the president. The president's commander-in-chief once war is declared. That's constitutional. Read the Constitution, people. You know, I think that would be better for us if we actually followed that prescription, because the Congress is much less likely to declare war than the president. The president. This is why the founding fathers put it this way. They made it this way because they knew the King of Great Britain. Now I've got over 15 minutes. Damn it. Okay, give me 2 videos again. Congratulations. You get to listen to me for even longer. But the King of Great Britain, one of the main criticisms against him was that he was taking us to war against the French and the Indians without the consent of the people, without even the consent of Parliament. So it was very important in our early founding that the people, through their representatives, have the power to declare war and not the president unilaterally like George W. Bush did in Iraq. At least he tried to get some sort of resolution passed in Congress. I mean, at least he gave some semblance of respect to the Constitution. Obama didn't even do that. He's like, well, the UN and NATO were going into Libya, so screw the Congress. I don't even have to notify. I don't even he didn't even have to notify the Congress. Tell them that we're going to war, that we're sending in our military. Completely unconstitutional. And I like Obama better than Bush. So it breaks my heart to say that Obama is probably worse on foreign policy than Bush is, because it's just, in some ways he is. As far as respecting the Constitution, I think he's probably smarter. What we did in Libya was smarter in tactics compared to Iraq, but the actual process, the constitutional process, he showed that even as a former constitutional law professor himself, he apparently has no respect for the Constitution if he can just go and do that and think that it's legitimate in any way. But back to my main point, which is that the government should only be defending this country. It would be disastrous for us economically. It would be disastrous for us just strategically, militarily-wise. I mean, we don't know, what's going to happen in Syria. Assad is not there. Al-Qaeda probably will come into Syria. We'll have more problems in Syria without Assad there than with. And I'm not saying Assad's a good guy and we should support him. I'm just saying let's not do anything, directly that's going to hurt our national defense, because that is our government's main priority, is to protect Americans, to protect the United States of America from being attacked. And I think that would be, completely disastrous to us. And it would be disastrous to our friend Israel. And it would also not be helpful to the Syrians. It's just going to create more bloodshed. So what is the proper approach now? If we're not going to bury our heads in the sand, but we shouldn't intervene militarily, probably asking yourself, well, what should we do? We should follow, I think, the prescription of what Theodore Roosevelt said for our foreign policy, which is speak softly and carry a big stick. Right now, our foreign policy seems to be shout loudly and swing your underfunded stick around like an epileptic trying to hit a piñata. Probably not the best idea. So I would say that, when it comes to like Iran or anybody that, we might think would attack us or be a threat to us, obviously we reserve the right to defend ourselves. That is constitutionally correct. It is, just sort of common sense. When it comes to a situation like Syria, where our national security is not threatened, but at the same time we don't want to bury our heads in the sand and say that, we don't care about the Syrian people, simply offer refuge. This is what we used to do in our early days. Send our Navy over there, not, for attack, but just say, anybody who wants to get out of this country, America welcomes you with open arms. I think that's the best path to take. Instead of getting involved and picking sides in the Civil War, we take the moral high ground. We say, we support any democratic reforms, not necessarily that we support one side versus another, because, again, you have, issues with the one side versus the other, whether one really is for true democratic reforms, true freedom, or whether they're just radical, theocrats over there being run by the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda. You don't know whose side to take, but you can always stand on principle that freedom everywhere is good for every people. It's good for Americans, it's good for Syrians, it's good for Iranians, it's good for Russians and Chinese and Europeans. Freedom works anywhere, and we should support it everywhere. But it's the manner in which we support it. Do we support it through our government, our military going in and, forcing it by force of arms, it doesn't work. You only create more problems for yourself. The best way is through setting a good example, which we haven't exactly been the best at doing. Setting a good example, promoting the ideas, spreading the ideas peacefully it always works better than doing it through force or violence. Always, always, always. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't stand up to bullies and that you shouldn't defend yourself or defend others when the time calls for it. And in situations of humanitarian crisis, I think it would be up to the Congress, to the people and their representatives to decide whether we should intervene in a certain situation. I think as a general rule we shouldn't. I think it's a wiser foreign policy if we don't intervene in the internal affairs of other nations. But if you have a situation like the Holocaust, or even I would argue Rwanda, if the people come together and in the Congress and they say, you know what, maybe we should intervene here. But it wouldn't be the president, it would be the Congress making it. We do it constitutionally correct. And in a situation like that, it wouldn't make sense. But usually, and in a situation like Syria, it's not going to work for us to intervene militarily. It's not good for us to pick sides here. So let's just stand up on our principles. Let's set a good example. And for the people there, let's offer refuge. Let's say, let's send our Navy over into the Mediterranean Sea and say, if you want to, swim to safety, here we are. We're here. We're not going to get involved in your war. We're not going to pick sides. We're not going to do something that's damaging to our national defense, that's damaging to our friends' national defense, Israel here I'm talking about, that's damaging to us economically when we can't afford to do anything, and that ultimately would not be in Syria's best interest. We wouldn't be really helping anybody by getting involved militarily over there. So I feel like that would be our best option, is to take a side of neutrality that isn't truly neutral, that it's a principled neutrality. Call it a principled neutrality, a pro-freedom neutrality. Sort of like Switzerland, but with a bigger army. And I feel like that would be closer to what Theodore Roosevelt's proposed foreign policy would be. I mean, when he was president, he didn't invade any country. He just paraded our Navy and our military around the world. And by the way, I'm going to thank Russell for that tidbit of history. I kind of used that. But he paraded it around the world and showed everybody that, hey, if you mess with us, this is what's going to happen. We're not going to come fight you. We're not going to go around looking for people to fight. But if you ever mess with us, this is what you're going to have to deal with. And that's exactly what we have the strongest military in the world. There's no reason why we shouldn't. We should always have the strongest national defense. And that's, something that conservatives, liberals, libertarians, we can all get behind. A strong national defense. It's in the Constitution. That is probably the greatest role of our federal government, is to defend this country. But our foreign policy, we've got to reevaluate it. And towards Syria especially. Let's not rush into this. Let's not start another war we can't afford. That would be harmful, ultimately, to the Syrian people. Trying to pick sides in the civil war where we don't really know if there's exactly a right side. We know there's a wrong side, the Assad side, but we don't really know if there's a right side here. And let's not do something that's harmful to our friends. And I'm kind of reiterating the same points here, but I'm trying to, get it concise to where, I'm trying to get it to where it, makes sense, to people who, both on the right and the left, the left, oh, we got to help these people on the right, and we got to, stand up to dictators and spread democracy, and that's kind of the way it is in Congress right now. You have people on both sides are supporting this war, or us going to war in Syria, and I think that, you got to take a step back and say, what really is in the best interest of the Syrian people. What's really the humanitarian position here? What would be best for our national security, and standing on our principles without compromising a wise and prudent foreign policy or our Constitution, the duty of our federal government. And that's the question we have to ask ourselves. And I think that the path that I sort of put forward would be the correct path to take. So, obviously, what I said at the beginning of this video turned out to be complete crap. I didn't keep it within 7 and 12 minutes. I can't help it. I'm sorry. I apologize. This is going to be 2 videos again, and I'm sorry. I'm going to try and keep it short next time. I really didn't mean to go this far, but, I feel like to get everything out there, sometimes you have to expound on what you're talking about, not just, shout out, nonsense. Because I see a lot of people on YouTube do that, they're just 5 minutes giving their opinion, but they don't really give anything to back it up. They're not really going through and saying, this is why I believe this way. And I think that's important for me to to put that out there. So next week, I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about next week. I haven't really picked it out, so it'll be a surprise, and hopefully it will be shorter. Whatever subject I pick, hopefully I won't have to expound on it as much. Before I go, I want to recommend a friend's channel site. Obviously, I want you to subscribe to me. Subscribe to my channel, please. Mr. Eleutherian is my channel's name. Well, actually, no, that's my profile name. I think I changed my channel's name to actually JustinTime now. So it is JustinTime. You'll see it. You can subscribe to it on my on this page that the video is on. But one of my friends, Blakely, I want you to subscribe to his video page as well, because he's a pretty good friend. He does videos sort of like this. They're shorter than mine, but he does weekly updates as well, as kind of on politics on the same line. I think we agree on most things. We might not agree on everything, but he convinced me to get started on this. He convinced me to do this, so I kind of want to give a shout out. Super Jonesable, and I'm going to put the link. You can see down there somewhere if it says see more or something like that. Go subscribe to his channel, because and if you want a shorter types of videos with the same basic perspective, go listen to him, because he's obviously much shorter than I am at getting his points across. I am way too lengthy in my opinions. I'm wordy. Can't help it. I'm wordy. Okay, so guess that's it. See you next week. This has been JustinTime, and as always,